omnipresent power, its strength, its heart, its mind, to join me in this precious hour, to bless, to break, to bind, and sever all the chains, the doubt, and veils that leave me blind, as we walk along through crooked path and leave this world behind.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Myths and Magic. Name pending, because I'm planning on changing it at some point in time, but I haven't picked an exact date yet. I'm still running through the names. I'm so happy for all of you to join me, for all of us to be here in this moment of purity, of holiness, of learning. And that is what we are all doing here. We are learning, we are trying to become better people, better souls, better practitioners of the arts of seduction or magic or whatever the hell you find yourself. So, we're going to be talking about a lot of things here. Now, on this channel, primarily, it is called Myths and Magic. I had a mind to change it, I think, a few times, and we're getting closer and closer to that goal. I sort of wanted to sort of encompass a lot of things and encapsulate my person. I may have perhaps a different person on there when the time comes. I will be doing other things instead, probably doing more things like this because, believe it or not, people, I have a mission. Well, not like in the traditional sense or the religious sense. What's the right word? I think I have a Oh my god, they call it the March, or I guess like the Mage March. Now, the Mage March is pretty much it's a sort of I guess it's a rite of passage, not so much, but it's a rite every mage has to make after a certain amount of time serving within the public eye or in the public sphere, as either an educator or as a worker or whatever field you find yourself and you happen to know magic. So, the Mage March, or I believe the Magic March is what they call it, is essentially a time span that can last for quite some time where a mage has to undergo a series of trials, of travels, and tribulations in order to ascend to a higher level of power or prowess. Some people use that time to gain insight from the spirits, perhaps predecessors that came before them. Honestly, that's what predecessor means. Otherwise, or sometimes they commune with, God. Sometimes they evolve in themselves as a person. They increase their own power, come into touch with themselves, perhaps with nature, the energies that are around them. It is a march that essentially is a time of testing and a time of proving. Sometimes they call it the proving. That's literally what it is. It's just a time of proving. But yes, teachers are not exempt from this. The reason why they considered me for this task, even though I am a professor at the university right now, is only because I am of a certain age where I should have done it already, but because I wanted to hurry up and get on with my studies and with my professions, with my careers or things of that nature, I sort of sped past it. The march, it's sort of an antiquated practice. It's when it's done through tradition. They sort of have this thing where it's sort of like a ceremony or I guess a festival to essentially, have the mages essentially walk off into the sunset for them to gain greater knowledge. And so upon them returning, they come back with either greater gifts than what they possess, gifts for their people, their families, insights, things that can help contribute to the society, to its progression. Or perhaps we receive some sort of great revelation from whatever deity I believe each sort of group believes in. So that's essentially what the march is. It's, I guess you could call it a pilgrimage, but I can't really say that's what it is actually. In fullness, it's just a rite of it's a rite of passage. You're literally walking out into the world, to gain perspectives, to gain new knowledge, new powers, to aid you in your life, and to help, the people that come after you. Your lineage, if you plan on having children, if not, your students, or perhaps, things like, creating better programs for schools, for your community, better ways of learning magic, discovering new things, creatures, tomes, you know, plants, anything like that. That's essentially what this march is about. So I will probably be heading towards my march when that happens. When they haven't really divulged when, I guess the time itself is liminal when they decide to sort of drop this thing on me. But it is pretty much what I'm going to be going through. And is it something that is welcome? Not really. I am one where I understand tradition. Some traditions are alright, but I honestly could care less about it. I believe that for us to progress, we must make new traditions or just abandon the whole thing about tradition. completely, unless if it's good and fun, everyone likes it. And just do something new, do something better than what it was before. That's how society sort of stays stagnant in their ways, and we're sort of trying to sort of breach past that point. It is, I think, a duty that all majors have, what they say anyway, for the society. If you're going to be a public figure, if you're going to be working in the public in society at all, if you're a professor especially, you have to make sure you partook in the march, because it is a great say, I mean, plus you also get sponsorships. It's almost like a marathon, really. um but it takes maybe a few years or short. It just depends how long the journey gets there and what you find. Now, what's at the end of the march? Mind you, this is a subject. This is just a tangent at the beginning. I'm talking about something else completely different. But the tangent that this sort of thing takes, it's some people say that there are certain markers that a major is supposed to take. Some say that they are spirit led. Others say that magic sort of leads them, and at the end of their journey, they'll come across a sort of revolutionary idea, or perhaps an object or a trinket that is offered to them by the creature or the thing that is overseeing their journey, to make sure that they've learned what they had to learn. Some journeys are very short. Other ones can take a long time, and it just depends upon the scope of the mage's abilities, the faculties, the mind, the body, spirit, how big the dicks are, or clits, whatever. You know what I mean? It's a time of testing, and it's testing you to see if you can pass it, if you will grow as a person, or if you pretty much stay where you are. Is a person able to take a mage march like this? Yes, sort of. You have to go through a certain process. I mean, a mage is only supposed to go through this thing once, and it is said that if you don't sort of pass it, you're essentially a failure and doomed to failure as a mage, and your sort of words and your works are much less supported. You don't really get the accolades that a lot of mages seek, if you even care about that sort of shit. And it can be quite devastating. I had a friend who failed it, and they haven't really been looked at the same. I think it is a disgusting practice that we have to do. Some people just can't make it on their own. Sometimes they need help, and other times maybe it wasn't their time to do it. So, but they are able to retake the march. But it could be at a very, you know, it could be at any point in time or history. It honestly depends upon what spirits, what energies are willing to make the time for it. So that's essentially what I'm going to be doing. So I don't know how long this is going to take, all of you. I'm going to be completely honest. But in the meantime, if I have to, I will be dropping, scry recordings such as this for all of you to sort of, get updates on my journey. Or if I decide to impart some knowledge that I have learned or that I have gleaned, perhaps some other practitioners or somewhere along my journey, I will be dropping that onto the channel. Okay, so there's that. I hope all of you are doing well. It has been quite hot this summer for some of us, and the weather has been ostensibly crazy and disgusting. So there is a lot of that. I hope all of you are, in higher spirits. Remember to take this time of summer before the fall comes in. That's when the real fun starts. But to just enjoy your time out there in the sun before you have to stay stuck indoors forever. I was more so of an autumn sort of person. Kosati Sailor was my time of year. The Dark Harvest, for those of you who didn't catch my last video on Kosati Sailor, it's on the channel. Look for it. That's, I think, what it's called. And it's a time where like the weather's a lot cooler, but it's not too cold to be outside. The leaves are changing. It's fall season, honestly, for some of you, and that's pretty much my preferred season. You can be outside. You can still do all the awesome things you did during the summer, but you have to put a little jacket on sometimes and be able to take it off. The air feels crisper, cleaner. There's beautiful scents and aromas in the air. It's a wonderful time. That's why I like to be there. Now, I was born during a liminal time of year. Things like spring, the end of spring, the beginning of summer. So I was born around then. I absolutely love spring, because spring is like fall. Fall is when things are dying. Spring is when things are coming into life. Things are being birthed. The only issue with it is the fucking allergies that attack my senses every goddamn year. So I'm having to deal with that on a daily basis during the springtime, and I have to be taking, potions, poultices, tonics, pills, that's what you want to call them, or capsules, of all makes, and honestly, some of the side effects aren't so good, and sometimes they're very good. I won't go into it further. There might be children listening. So without further more delay, I'm going to go into the subject of today's lesson. So I believe in a previous video. Oh, and mind you, I am recording on a special microphone for this sort of recording. I sure want the audio quality to be a little bit better, and I sort of want to see where this goes when I finally upload this sort of thing. I'm rather excited. I hope you guys see the light of this message. If not, I'm going to be very upset. I believe I spoke a long time ago about spiritual jurisdictions. Okay, there's sort of these hubs to where spirits have, where they sort of have dominance in a certain area. And why they sort of haunt things occurs because they have sort of dominance in this area. Their energy is influencing this. It can change the landscape and everything of that nature. I think that is the general gist of what I talked about in that video. It's around 30 minutes or so. I have it on there. But it's something that I think is really interesting to think about when it comes to the occult practices, how spirits work, or how when you hear about things like domains, or it's pretty popular in animes now. And talk about like for example in Jujutsu Kaisen, brilliant show, wonderful animation. They talk about things like the I guess like what's it called, spiritual expansion or whatever, or spiritual domain or something like that. It's essentially this huge sphere, this little area you're creating where you are dominating this sort of area, and so you are influencing this area on a on a spiritual level, even to the molecular level as well. And so everything that's within this area is essentially under your um control, or it's under your dominance, your power, anything and everything that sort of goes into that sort of thing. So that's pretty much what a spiritual jurisdiction is. And the effects that you see from that are dependent on what type of spirit is sort of, dominating that area. Is it something that spirits do often? The weaker spirits, not so much. But the stronger a spirit gets and the more influence it wants to, I believe, gain from, whatever, for whatever purpose, these sort of things become a bit more proficient. Okay? But I'm not going to go into spiritual jurisdiction. I already talked about that in that episode. I encourage all of you guys to sort of hear it, to see it. And I probably might make a name drop or two in this one. So this one, I'm going to talk about, I think the right word is to say, I had it for a second. It was involving, well, I don't want to say this word because I feel like it's going to borrow from this anime. Okay, so if you guys are familiar, there is an anime known as Black Clover. It's very popular. A lot of people like it. It's a lot of mage stuff, and they have some concepts in there that sort of align with the occult practices and sort of the theology behind it. And a lot of things that sort of do line up, and there's other things that they take liberties with because it's anime. It's supposed to be exaggerated. They take concepts within certain things that exist. They explain it in a way that makes sense on a logical manner, and then they sort of do with it whatever they want. But I think Mana Zone, I think I did talk about Mana Zones before, sort of with spiritual jurisdictions, perhaps. But I think this is what I want to talk about. I'm going to call it perhaps a magic hub, or a sorcerer's sphere, or something like that. I mean, or I guess it's just like a zone of energy or mana, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I really hope I'm not reiterating anything I mentioned in the past videos. But I'm going to be telling you about certain places. Um, it could be locations that are outside or that are indoors that you can utilize your magic and where you can sort of absorb the mana within those places. How these places play a pivotal role, perhaps, in our society, how we see these sort of things, and I guess how it can affect our magic, how it can affect our practice, and what it can do to the mind. So there are a lot of people that are familiar with a lot of organizations, a lot of buildings, a lot of places, and some of these organizations, buildings, and places have special effects on our emotional state, on our mental state, on our spiritual state. We have places like, for example, when you go to the Grand Canyon, the sort of energy that it evokes, the majesty of everything that is there. It is a testament to Earth and what Earth has and what Earth is and how Earth was carved, not just by itself, but by other elements as well, when you dive into the history. You have certain sites like Niagara Falls, for example, a huge display of, water at work, the majesty, the force, the power of water. You know, that as the first example I will bring up, since we're on the subject, is, I believe, a hub of energy. You have this flowing of water, things that is imbued with inherent magical properties, things like memory, things like resonance, and things like healing. All of these sort of things are sort of in water, in the element itself. And so when it comes to tapping into that sort of energy, it is good to be around it. You sort of tend to feel it with your senses, your sense of touch, your smell. Even things like hearing the water go by, they sort of do things to the mind and to the body that can either put you at ease or that can fill you with a sort of sense of renewed energy, of healing, of vigor. Water has this beautiful property about it, has this beautiful element, this beautiful energy, this beautiful spirit, a feminine spirit, might I add, that allows you to be filled from the inside out just by being near it. And so these sort of things tend to harbor these qualities, and that in itself is an area of magic. And so when you are using magic that incorporates things like water, that can incorporate things like healing, perhaps resonance or memory, water is a very good element to use for memory magic, or for, I think, spells for the memory, because water has been proven to hold memory in it. It is capable of, receiving information, transmitting sort of things through the ripples. It's sort of like echoes of something that was spoken, or echoes of something that is done. A wave, or perhaps a tsunami, in a better instant, can be extremely reminiscent of what happened before. Sort of like how stars appear in the night sky. The shine or the light you see from distant stars is something that traveled millions of years, or thousands of years, to reach this point. You're essentially looking at a ripple of what occurred in the past, but it is just now reaching you. And so water functions on a similar level. Water is something that can possess great energy and great power. It is something to be feared and respected. But water, when used properly, can do amazing things or even terrible things. Water can, erode earth. It can drown cities and people and animals. It can quench fires that would otherwise warm you, help cook your food. Water can be extremely oppressive or extremely beneficial. You need water to sustain life, but water can also be used to end life in certain aspects. There are certain things that can benefit from there being a lot of water. Of course, things like fish or animals that are able to use the water to swim or to maneuver around quite well. However, when it comes to, land-based creatures or any creatures in general, if the entire earth was covered in water, the only things that could survive in it are perhaps creatures that are in the sea. The issue is too is that if the water itself isn't of a nurturing type, not even vegetation could grow underneath. So water has to be in a certain, state of being in order to accommodate life, as well as it destroying it. So water itself, in this aspect, in this comparison, being near Niagara Falls, for example, is a very great hub to absorb magic and energy. That's what this is going to be about, absorbing energy and using it. The other thing, to the benefit of Niagara Falls, however, is that there's loads of people there. There are a lot of bodies, a lot of souls, a lot of spirits seeing these things, because these waterfalls have a sort of significance to a lot of people. Some people, it's for money, obviously. Other ones, it's just to behold the majesty that exists within the water. If there was no water there, we'd just be looking at a high cliff, and there's nothing essentially, miraculous about it. But the fact that there's moving, running water, how it's essentially reaching from one plane of existence to another, and by existence I mean, Canada to the US, New York, or whatever you want to call it. It is moving from one place to another, and the form it is taking, it's like a wall of water. It's something that you don't really see often. I mean, even other places like Angel Falls, I think that's located in, I could be extremely wrong, South America, or perhaps in another part of the world. It's essentially a waterfall that is so highly elevated. How the waterfall falls from an insanely high height, and as it falls, the sort of just disperses into this mist. It's almost like it's magically whisked away. Um, and so it's like Angel Falls. It's like water that's meant for the heavens or something like that. There's a lot of things behind it, but look it up. Angel Falls, I think, is the right word that it's called. But I think that site itself, as well as many others, are sacred to some people because they bear great significance. They have an energy about them. They have a resonance within the spirit realm and within here that people can utilize for magic. when it comes to absorbing the energies and things like that. Another place of, I think, high magical energy, just to, sort of get out of the natural aspect with things like waterfalls and such, would be going to a concert. Concerts, for example, are great hubs of energy, and you can use a concert, I'm sorry, not consort, something else, though that could be used, to be fair. But no, a concert, for example, is a hub of immense energy. It also depends what kind of it is. A concert can have a whole list of emotions that are themselves expressions of energy. If you want to, like, let's say, for example, you're feeling a bit under the weather, things of that nature. If you go to a concert, I'm really trying not to say the other word. If you're going to a concert, concert, not a consort, a concert. You're going to go to a concert, there's going to be a lot of hype, a lot of energy. When the instruments are playing, they are sending out vibrations, they are sending out energy that is essentially produced by the musician playing it. So their energy, their intention is fueling this instrument, and this instrument is simply vibrating it towards you. It's a ripple effect like water. It's carrying the energy, the message, the feeling, the emotions from the practitioner, like a drummer, for example, into the receiver, which would be the victim, or perhaps the person where the sort of spell is taking place. Music is a brilliant source of magic, and it's something that I think I should definitely talk about in another video if I didn't go into greater depth. But a concert is an extremely potent place of energy and power. If you're a practitioner, notice what I'm talking about. When you go there in person, feel the instruments, feel the music, feel the energy. It is absolutely palpable. It is disgustingly effective. Like, for example, when I went to see the Phantom of the Opera live for the first time, I was in the theater watching it. They're no longer touring. I didn't see the last show. I watched it twice. I think years before they decided to do their last show in Radio City in New York. But when I went there, you always heard tales about this opera, and I know it can be rather dated, but you have to be sort of in a type of mindset. But the opera itself, though it can seem sort of dated or tacky to some people, it is something that speaks on an extremely profound level to those that identify with the Phantom. It is about the Phantom of the opera and the secondary characters that are sort of in the lives of the Phantom itself. I'm not going to explain the story of the Phantom of the Opera. Look it up, watch it. It's on YouTube, whatever you want to say. But when I was there, and when it came to a certain point in the play itself, it sort of reached this climax that is sort of harder for movies to attain, but easier to do in person if it's during a play. The actors are enraptured by this timing of the play. Something pivotal happens where you feel the heartbreak, you feel the passion, you feel the love of the Phantom for Christine, for what he has to go through. The Phantom was a person that was ostracized, that was rejected by his own mother, by his parents, who was abandoned as an orphan, and who was disfigured because of the failed abortion process his mother was taking. She drank poison to kill the baby, but she ended up giving birth to the baby regardless. It's sort of like a Quasimodo thing, but it's a lot better written. And so the Phantom is he's not used to any sort of, contact with anyone. So he builds this sort of relationship with this girl. He doesn't go about it the right way because he doesn't know how to love the right way. He doesn't know how to feel the right way. He just knows that he cares for this person deeply. And so he's confessing himself. And so you see you see the emotions in the face, you hear it in the voice, in the music. And it is hitting you on a wavelength, on a way that penetrates the heart if you identify with this sort of thing. And it escalates beyond that. And so it tears at your heartstrings to an incredible degree. I cried during that performance. My sister did as well. And when we brought her friends over, her girlfriends as well were crying about it. And it's something that, unless if you can understand the point of view from the Phantom there, from what you are seeing, you don't really know, what's going on. And the entire play is done from the Phantom's perspective, if you pay attention from the beginning. So it's absolutely about the Phantom in every respect. But that place, that theater, becomes a sacred ground for the arts, because a story is being told, And so magic is being woven, is being created, it is taking effect in the crowd. And the result from the magic is tears. It's a sense of sadness, but it is also a sense of passion, of almost like forgiveness, or I believe redemption, or something that is like it comforts you, saying that I finally have what I've been searching for, what I never thought I could have. And it is a very beautiful feeling. And so these sort of feelings, this sort of energy, the entire theater was silent for this part of the film. You could hear the actors of clarity. It was you could hear a pin drop in that entire theater, filled with I think 1,000 people. It was extraordinary. You could cut the air with a knife. The atmosphere was palpable. It was heavy. You could feel the pressure in the room just by that performance, by how it was being done. The voices, the music, the performance in general was able to evoke such a powerful thing. Now that I'm remembering, this is something that I talked about in the very beginning of my channel, in the things beforehand, about things that we do that's magic, or things that have a magical effect. But I'm talking more so about places. But a concert, in that similar aspect, has the same effect. Okay? So there's that. A concert can have a great amount of energy that you can then tap into. And then you have things like a waterfall, a more natural aspect. So let's try a spiritual aspect then in this instance, okay? We have something like a cemetery, or perhaps even a church of some kind. These are places of reverence. These are places of worship in some aspects. You're either there to honor those who passed, or to honor that which you believe is still living, that gives you great power. A place that is, in one aspect, solely devoted to, the honoring of a specific thing, of the worshiping of something, of the giving of energy that is essentially sent up through this sort of religious center, or to the spirits that are there, is something that you can tap into, and it's something that is, creating magic in real time. Versus the contrast with the cemetery, it is a place of silence, where the type of energy that manifests is a type of what we perceive as negative energy, or I believe death energy, because that is what lies there, something that is dead, no longer living, but it has ties to a living energy, to a living aspect, to a living creature of some kind. Cemeteries are always quiet, and the inherent belief is that this is a resting place for those who pretty much live their lives here, whether it was to the fullest or not. Sometimes those graves have a lot of regret, other times it's a lot of happiness, and sometimes it's a mixture of both, melancholy or bittersweetness. And so graveyards, cemeteries, and churches are great hubs of magical energy and of occult practices when you think of this sort of thing. Now, the reason why I mention this is because when you're in those sort of places, those places in themselves can have an effect on our magic, how we do things. The magic that is there can absolutely make its way into your magic. The feeling, the mana can even pollute yours if you're not careful, or it can fuel whatever practice or whatever thing you're doing. And on that note, I think it was the person I wanted to mention, for example, I was watching Ivy the Occultist on YouTube. Brilliant woman, brilliant practitioner. She identifies herself more as an occultist, a person that practices chaos magic mostly. But she's incredibly learned, and I like hearing her perspectives. But she talks about how she has a sort of a draft, I believe, what's the proper word? A phylactery, where she keeps it of her own blood. I believe she said of her own blood or something, that is then able to absorb the magic in a certain place she goes to. Sort of like vampiric magic is what she talked about, I think, in this video. I think it's called vampiric magic. If I can find the link, I'll post it up on, then you can see it if you're able to click on it at all, depending on what format this sort of thing goes up. But Ivy the Occultist on YouTube, search for vampiric magic or something like that. But she pretty much goes into the theory, into the practice of being able to absorb the energy to give yourself a boost in your life. If you're feeling down, it's a sort of way to, learn how to sort of tap into the energy of something that is living or dead, or something that's a bit ambiguous, in order to fuel your magic, to fuel your craft, or to simply fuel your spirit as a person to continue to linger. Sort of like how a person needs a cup of coffee to, I guess, exist or be a fucking person during the day. I don't need any coffee. I am full energy all the time, but I do get tired. But I have a different spirit. My spirit's a bit more energetic than normal. I like to believe anyway. I mean, it's evidence. We've talked to a lot of people. They say, how do you have this energy in the morning? I just do. If it's out of hatred, it gives me energy. If it's out of joy, it gives me energy. Learn how to tap into that energy when you go to these places, okay? And certain places, like I said, have an effect on us as well. When you go to a job you don't like, that has an effect on your magic. It has an effect on your spirit as well, and you cannot deny it. If you're in a place that gives you anxiety, it's incredibly dangerous to be there. It's not good for your spirit or your magic, and it will in fact interfere with your magic, unless if you're made of stronger stuff. But even still, it is difficult to combat those sort of things. But when we go back into the places that have magical power, you consider things like concerts or music halls. Think of natural places like the Grand Canyon, a volcano even, or like the waterfall, which I mentioned, and the effects the water has on the body and has it in our magic and our craft. And then you have things like religious or spiritual places, or pseudo-spiritual, depending on where you want to go with that sort of thing, where you have things, like churches and cemeteries. And you can even throw things like school or work into the mix. But the purpose of this video was to essentially show you the hubs of energy and magic and how to tap into that sort of magic, or be the opportunity to see those places differently in order to tap into it. Some people just do this thing without even knowing it. But if you need this perhaps a boost of energy, if you want something to incorporate into your working, if you're going to work with a specific type of spirit or anything like that, look towards these places. Go towards something that has great natural significance, physical significance, mental or even spiritual significance. And depending on what sort of craft you are doing and for what purpose, go to these sort of sites, these sources of that magic, of that mana, of that energy, and use it for what you need to. There's a lot of places we go to, a lot of things that we do that we don't consider magical in the slightest, but consider where you are, how it makes you feel, if it takes away your energy, if it gives you energy, if it gives you a different type of energy than what you had prior. These are places and hubs of magical energy. Okay, so take that into effect, class. You will be tested, by the way. I think next week, we talked about the Gwofta. I think I will talk about this channel, what I believe what a Gwofta is, and the magical creatures that we find in Antisha. Make sure you do not stone or cast down the gonzos in the skies. Those need to stay up there. We're not going to be housing gonzos in the nursing wing, okay? We are tired of the fucking games. It is not Kosati Sailor yet, so you cannot be killing any gonzos to make for stew or for dinner. It's not the time for that just yet. And the gonzos, believe it or not, are a protected species. Stop knocking them down. It's not for that. It's not for you. Stop being stupid. I can't urge that well enough. So I'm sorry if I peaked there. I just got really enraged out of nowhere. But consider the words I'm telling you, okay? So without prior more delay, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, if you in fact are watching this video. I hope that what I spoke to you helped you with your further endeavors into the craft, into your spiritual, mental, or energetical practices. Consider what I told you. Go to these sites if you need a sort of energy, if you need a sort of inspiration, if you need a sort of contact with the spirits that reside in those areas. Make sure that you are practicing in safety, whether it is sex or magic. Remember that you are part of a group of friends, a collective of minds and wisdom, of knowledge, and that we are also a family. And whether we are different, even though family can fight, we all sort of, are together in that aspect. And there's something that sort of holds us and binds us together. Make sure you keep up with your classes. Make sure you strengthen yourself however way you can for your daily life, for your daily struggle. And remember that I am here for you. That your other brothers and sisters or whatever's in the clan, in the collective, are here for you as well. Remember that I care for you and that I love you deeply, as we all do as a family here. So if you have a brother locked in a cage, make sure you leave him out once in a while, because it gets rather gassy in there. Make sure that you are wiping your ass appropriately, front and back, because if you don't scoop the other way, you will find shit, believe it or not. That's why you get streaks in your underwear. I'm not speaking from experience. And when you go outside in this hot summer heat, make sure to bring yourself some extra water, because it can be rather dangerous out there if you're not properly hydrated. So, goodbye everyone, and thank you so much for watching. I love you, and until next time, happy practicing. Don't be stupid, please.